when I was 10 is we lived in this like apartment complex with like it was a really good place, and it had its own like garden and its tennis court and everything, and there were other kids around my age. But my mother was very strict with certain things with me for my own benefit, she would say. But like, and she was taking all the hatred that she had for my father from me. I was scared of her. I think a lot of the times I was scared of her. Personally, when you were a kid at that age, you're like, what did I do wrong? And when you're like the kid or something, you think it's normal, right? So what happened is this one night, and I think that's like one of the most important nights, if not the most important night of my life, where I'm feeling particularly depressed, right? And I don't even know like if I have depression or anything at that point in my life, but I'm just like very suicidal. To the point that I would take solace in like I would feel relieved from imagining my own death. I would think of myself dying in different kind of scenarios, and it would make me feel better about myself because I would be in control. I don't know if that makes sense, but like it would be all like ridiculous ways, right? Like a giant thing crushes on me and I just die instantly, and I would fantasize about this, and that was kind of like my safe haven in my mind, you know, just
But
like
then
thinking of my own death.
The constant pain is gone. This
Yeah,
is
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I was at a place that I was feeling so worthless that yeah, I really wanted to kill myself. I never really did it, but I always wanted it. You know what I mean? Like I never really tried for real, but I always like for years during those times I really wanted it. And this one night that I'm talking about is one of like the worst times. And then I go out randomly because the guy that I told you about, like from my childhood, like my childhood friend that I kind of like alienated myself from along the way, he asked me to go out with him. Like we weren't like super alienated, we were just not as close anymore. But he asked me to go out. We were still hanging out. And normally I wouldn't have gone out. I would have just stayed home, played Dota or something. But then I felt bad or something, you know, that I didn't see him. We went out and we went down to the sea. And another childhood friend of ours came, and she was someone I hadn't seen in like 10, 15 years maybe. You know what I mean? Like it was not someone that I hung out with at all or like talked to at all. And we kind of like started talking in the middle of like everyone just talking and stuff. And I explained like, you know, I'm feeling really bad about myself. I feel really, you know, unworthy of things that I'm given. I feel like I should just die and stuff like this. And then she goes, listen, I know what you're going through. I have a therapist who actually really helped me, and I want you to go see her. Just see her. Just meet her. You don't have to take like a session, just meet her, she said. And she gave me the phone number. I was very skeptical at this point. I was so skeptical because of my previous experience with therapists. This is how I went to her. And as soon as I met her, I saw the way that she looked at me was so much compassion and almost like love, even though she didn't know me at all. She made me feel that. Okay, it's interesting. I don't know how she did it, to be honest. Even to this day, like to me, it's like she's my guardian angel or something like that, like for real. And of course, like there had been a lot of bad things along these like 5 years that I'm talking about, of like my mother being like overly aggressive towards me and everything. And through just meeting her and explaining her my situation and everything, she goes and basically tells me she wants to meet my mother. My mother comes for a session herself. And after meeting her, like the next session, my therapist goes, listen, Alican, you have to get out of that house. You have to like stop contact completely with this woman, no matter what. Like just cut contact, she said. And that's exactly what I did. I literally just like ran away from home at the age of like 25.
Okay.
I jumped from the balcony and everything, dude. Like my mom like locked the door and stuff so I wouldn't leave. Like I threw my guitar off the balcony. We were living at like the lowest floor. I literally jumped off it.
You said
Hmm.
you went to the therapy. The therapist wanted to meet your mom, and
Hmm.
after she did, the next session, the therapist told you that you have to leave. Imagine yourself in that moment. How did you feel? Someone telling you, "Hey, you have to leave your mom." What was the emotion coming to you?
I don't remember exactly, to be fair with you, how I felt at that moment because so we were doing something called cognitive behavior therapy, and that
Yeah.
was a fourth wave, and that's why it worked on me. By the way, I want to talk about that a little bit
Mm.
before I answer that question exactly. So the reason that the other therapists didn't work with me is that they were very dismissive of what I liked and what I wanted. They would just say like, "You need to stop playing games." I wasn't gonna stop playing games. You can't make me stop playing games at that point. This therapist was like, "It's okay that you play games." Like she accepted me as I am, and that's like the fourth
Mm.
wave thing, right? Like I looked it up. Like the fourth wave is the accepting version. Like it doesn't try to change you necessarily off the bat. It like gradually rewires your brain with cognitive behavior therapy, basically doing like things to make you do things like homeworks. Like my homework was go to a store, try out a few jeans at a store, and don't buy anything and go out. That was my homework. I struggled so much with this homework because I always felt like an asshole to go to a store, waste these people's times, and leave like nothing happened. I would
Mm.
always like if I go somewhere, I would buy something so that it's like worth their time, because I felt like my time meant nothing. If I went to a restaurant and the food that I ordered wasn't right or good or whatever, I would never give it back. So those are my homeworks. Like she was trying to make me do these things so I can slowly understand that I am worth something, right?
Mm.
And I think that was like her saying this was kind of like part of it where I had to do something and I just had to like blindly trust her that doing this thing would help me in the end. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the emotions that I must have felt, because I don't remember exactly, was most likely relief that someone understands me, that like I am not the problem. This isn't normal. What's happening to me isn't normal. A mother isn't supposed to tell their child like they wish that they had never given birth to them like every day. Um, there was a moment in those 5 years that I also felt like something called depersonalization, where I felt like I wasn't myself anymore. I felt
Mm.
like I was kind of like controlling myself, like in a third person game,
Yeah.
like I was playing GTA with myself or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I couldn't tell the difference between dream and reality. And I felt that like I just jump into like different things. I'm sorry, but I felt that like if I jumped in front of like a taxi or something, that I wouldn't die. And I told my mother this. Maybe like a year, maybe 2 years before I met my therapist. I told my mother about how I was feeling. And the next day, my mother called one of her friends over and started essentially yelling. I wake up of her yelling at her friend about me, about how crazy I am and how she doesn't deserve such a crazy child and what has she done wrong in her life to deserve me and all of these things.
Mm.
So when I confided something so important and
Mm.
so insanely like scary, imagine like you have a son and it just tells you like if I jump into a car, I'm not gonna die. And the next day, instead of like helping me, she just makes fun of me and makes the situation much, much worse. I'll always remember that. I don't think she will ever, like, I don't think I'll ever forgive her for doing that. Like, ever.
Yeah. No,
I
I
think that's like
understand.
one of the worst things that she's ever done to me. Because it's like your honor and you're like, you hurt emotionally and kind of like in your soul,
Mm.
like, it's not like the fear or like being hit or
Yeah.
anything like that. It's just like, I'm already so down. Instead of showing me love and helping me, you push me even further into like this thing. And that's when I had for like gone to therapist the last time before I got to my last therapist, and she was like very, unhelpful and everything. And like I really didn't expect too much. But then when this happened, she like the therapist that saved me, like let's say my guardian angel one that I'm talking about, she had built so much trust with me from the
Yeah.
fact that like what she would do after a session, she would hug me
Hmm.
every time, and she would say like it's not allowed. Normally, a therapist is not supposed to hug their
Mm-hmm.
like
Patient.
client, yeah, their patient. Um, like it's forbidden and it's kind of like frowned upon in like the therapist community as well. But she had always this like, even thinking about it makes me emotional because she always had this like compassion, and she's not that much older than me, by the way, like maybe like 6 years old or something like that. She had this like love and compassion in her looks as she like hugged me and everything, and I think that that really like built a trust that I was like really respecting her opinions a lot. So when she went and said like, yeah, you gotta, leave that house and everything, to me that was just like gospel. I had to do it. There was no other way. Like I wouldn't like ever say like, oh, but she's my mother or anything like that. Like she says this,
You
I do it because
you
everything
took it
that
as
she
the
had done,
truth.
exactly, because everything she had done up until that point was for my benefit and it was working in my opinion. It's like very incremental. So those who are going to therapy right now, those who are maybe going through major depression, especially if you're someone who doesn't have a good time seeing therapists in the past, try to find a fourth wave cognitive behavior therapy if you can, because that's much more accepting and it's easier to get for people who are more stuck in their own ways. And know that like it's a gradual change. Like you gotta do your homeworks, you gotta do the things that they tell you to do. You gotta share everything that you have. Like right here, right now, I'm being very open. Like
Yeah.
I'm not leaving anything out. You have to share everything that you have with them, and then eventually, slowly, you'll see gradual improvement. It doesn't happen overnight. But at that
Yeah.
point, I had seen gradual improvement from her, and the fact that she cared, that I could never really say like, no, you're wrong or something. Like I didn't want to, right?
Hmm.
To me, she was more of a mother than my mother. You
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Hmm. For the people who are listening, I just have to take a deep
Yeah.
breath because I feel very intense per se. Yeah, yeah. All the stuff that you say. Take a deep breath with me, Alida. That was
It's
very
okay.
short.
Okay, I'll do it again.
Yeah,
Alright,
that was better.
right,
Let the shoulders go.
alright.
Yeah, I feel from the stuff that you told me. So I know there are a few. Um, yeah, the stuff that you. I feel like it comes from not having boundaries and
Mm,
what we talked about, the parents not really respecting your boundaries,
yeah.
and that boundary can become toxic for you in a sense that I think I read this in a book or listened to it in a podcast, but there's the number one, they deny your reality.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to them, say, hey, this and this
Oh,
happened, this, no, no, this never happened.
oh, baby, I have a
uh,
lot of stories of that.
this
Best
never
example.
happened, this was in your
Yeah,
imagination.
yeah, yeah,
Or the
yeah,
second
yeah,
one, so
yeah.
it's ignorance, and ignorance is one of the most powerful form of conditioning for young teenager or as people as a kid. And the second one was uh, abusing your privacy and trust, like when you go to her with something so deep to
Yeah.
you as, hey, I had this dream and this is something that I'm thinking about, I might take my own life, and putting it out there and being vulnerable to someone who you supposedly love and trust, but then the next day waking up to that person betraying that trust by explaining everything in a funny way to maybe someone else. I can imagine that you kind of, you know how it, imagine it, that you lose your perception of, am I crazy, or this is something really not normal.
Yeah.
And then I think what that therapist did for you, maybe try to recalibrate your perception of what is right and what is wrong. That, hey, what your mother is doing to you, maybe you thought is normal, but then people don't get it. This is what you said. And then there comes this fourth person that is more knowledgeable, has a
Mm-hmm.
better view of everything, that say, hey, I understand your perception and I give you a hug, and this is not normal.
Yeah.
and you need
because
to do this because
no,
this is
you're completely right. Like, you're
yeah,
so right. You're so right. It's like uncanny how right you are about this
yeah,
actually. Because I think I just needed like because I was feeling so bad about myself and
yeah.
I hated myself so much. Everything that my mother did at that point, even the thing that I mentioned with the personalization,
Oh,
is I thought I deserved that. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like that I was trash, and it was okay that she was treating me as trash.
So you
You
were
know?
dealing with your self-worth of
Exactly. No, I had
no.
zero self-worth. Zero
Mm.
self-worth at that point in my life. Like I hated myself so much. Like I went from this person who was like the teenager, like I'm better than you guys because I like these
Yeah.
movies and stuff like that, you know, or like I'm more intelligent and stuff like this, to like someone who's like I am the worst of the worst. I deserve nothing. Like abuse me as you want because that's what I deserve, you know. So because of that, I had never really thought of it as an important point. And then, like you said, like when she was like the third person that came in and gave her perspective,
Yeah.
that meant a lot. But a lot of the therapy that we did was her making me realize that I do deserve more. Like I'm not
Yeah.
trash, you know? Like she built my confidence up slowly to someone who was just like I wouldn't be able to talk, you know? Like nowadays Sooroosh knows me whenever we get together, I yap and yap and I talk a lot and you know, I'm excited and I want to share and all of these things. Back then, about like 10 years ago,
Mm.
if we went out together, I would be silent the whole time. Like to the level that people that are around me would be like, "Hey, why are you not saying anything?" or something. Like I wouldn't
Mm.
enjoy myself. I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't do anything because I thought, you know, what I had to say didn't matter. What I wanted, what I desired didn't matter. If people were gonna order pizza together and I didn't want pizza, I would never say I don't want pizza. You know, I would always just go with the group because I didn't want to be a bother. And that was me for so many years because my entire ego was stripped down.
Because you always felt like you're a bother.
I always felt like I was a bother. Like that was a really hard thing to get through. And then through therapy, essentially I came out the other way where I was just like much more confident. I
Mm.
started talking more, etc. And as I started enjoying life more, I became who I am now, which is like much more
Mm.
excitable, much more talkative person. So
Yeah.
that was a part of it because like back then I would only play games and do things in games because in real life it just wasn't working for me. You know, like I
Mm.
wasn't doing anything, I wasn't accomplishing anything, I was worth nothing, and I wasn't talking to people. I wasn't able to like correlate or like relate to anyone, right?
Yeah.
And all of these things. So it was very tough. Like even looking back, just you saying that kind of reminded me of these things because otherwise I kind of had forgotten. But
Yeah.
I was in like that kind of a place in my life. Even to this day, when we talk,
Mm-hmm.
uh, something happens, and then she acts like it didn't happen or something, or like it happened differently. Even if it's something minor, it makes me go crazy because it reminds me all the other times in my life that
Yeah.
she's denied reality. You know, it's
Understand.
really hard to deal with. So then, once I left, I really did realize that holy shit, my life is better. So what I did is obviously I can't live by myself. I actually moved in with my grandfather. I wanted to be like, okay, I'm with you now, and my father had his own family at that point as well, or has still, to be fair, like remarried, a new kid, and all of these things. So I moved in with my grandfather, and I lived with him for about 2 years. And during those 2 years, the first year, I didn't talk to my mother at all, and things started improving rapidly. I did give her a second chance by basically, okay, I'll come back if you apologize and you behave better at that point, etc. And it seemed like she had like putting that boundary to her, basically like I'm not gonna see you anymore, seemed to have done some sort of effect. Like
Mm.
because before I was always just her, walking mat, and
Yeah.
now I was just like taking my stance. She started like showing actual respect towards me that she
Because now
wasn't
you
before.
now you showed your boundary that hey, if you cross it, I'm out of here.
Exactly. And so that's
This is
something that I like suggest everyone that goes
yeah.
through something similar.
Yeah.
But what also happened is I developed epilepsy during this time of my life.
Mm.
Everybody was like, "What the fuck just happened? You're 25 years old. How are you developing, you know, epilepsy out of nowhere?"
Yeah.
So we had like brain scans, see if there's a tumor. Nothing seems to be too wrong. thinking about it now, it does make me like kind of emotional of like
Yeah.
to remember all the times that like I couldn't even function as a human being. I would just like shut down entirely. I couldn't move, you know? Like I remember like at school it happened once. It was really bad. Like people were like, should we call a like ambulance? Honestly, it was really
Mm.
really shitty. But we got through it as well, thanks to some drugs that I mentioned, and again like living a better life, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. How old are you here?
25,
25,
26.
26. Okay. So
Yeah,
it got better. So you
25,
moved
26.
out. You moved out from your mother's
Yeah.
house and then started getting therapy, and that felt better.
So now I actually was in a good mental state, far
Yeah.
away from my house, far away from my mother, and I could actually focus and I could actually like do it. Like I had the mental capacity to be able to even go to school and pay attention, or to be able to study for my exams and stuff. So
Yeah.
the me who wasn't going so much and who was like missing out and not studying for exams or not caring, it disappeared as I moved away and the therapy started actually working and I felt
Hmm.
better about myself. I started going to school. I started studying.
Yeah.
I made some friends at school that I was studying with. And I didn't fail like a single class essentially until I gave like 2 years and then I basically graduated. I feel very grateful that I could stay with my grandfather during that time
Yeah.
because it was just much more
Safe for you.
stable,
Yeah.
yeah, and safe. He had someone working for him. He still does, to be fair. That's like taking care of stuff at the house. So I was actually eating like home cooked meals
Mm.
for the first time because you have no idea the amount of fast food that I've eaten since I was like 18 years old. I would wake up, eat one pizza, and not eat for the rest of the day.
But then at your grandfather's, you got this
Exactly.
safe environment, good food. You
Yeah,
graduated.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So then I like that. That it actually also really, really helped me. So I think the environment is really important. Like the
Yeah.
fact that you are getting some sort of like love and care
Yeah.
matters, even if it's from like some Georgian woman that works for your grandfather. Like a home cooked meal is very important, at least to
Yeah.
me. It shows love and care that someone cares about you in that way. Of course, could I have cooked for myself? Yeah, absolutely. I do now, but not at that point of my life. I wouldn't have.
If you don't, if you're not in an environment that is healthy or you're getting love and it's an
Hmm.
environment that is toxic, try to change the environment. I always tell people that
Exactly.
people are afraid that, yeah, but I love them. We have been together for 5 years. We
Yeah.
have been, it's my mother. It's,
Hmm.
you have to take care of yourself before
First.
you
Yeah.
can take care of anyone.
Yeah.
And sometimes that requires you to physically leave before, and like what you said with the swamp thing,
Hmm.
you need to physically leave to clear the swamp or to
Hmm.
mentally have a clear view over something and then come back and
Yeah.
then talk about things and try to fix other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure, man. For sure. Then I think we'll slowly wrap up to get to like the good parts. Okay. So what I want to kind of like end this in is like I explained this and I hope like some of the people that listen can relate to some of the things that has happened here. A lot of it is bad, but I'm sure there are people that went through much worse as well. Essentially, going down into major depression, developing epilepsy, things looking really bad,
Physically and mentally.
physically and mentally.
Hmm.
And then, through the help of some people, I'll say mainly my therapist, and to be honest, myself, like I pulled myself up in a major way as I started working. So what I did was I tried to be like a streamer or something,
Yeah.
and then I tried to make it like that, but it didn't work out. And then I actually like learned Python and started a job in Ankara,
Yeah.
right? And I had to move out again. And to be honest, in that like 1.5 years or something that I spent with my mother after I came back from my grandfather, things were good at the start, like maybe first 6 months or something, but it started devolving again. Like she started becoming mean again. Not as mean as she was before. She wasn't an alcoholic anymore, and she had moved past the thing with my father at that point. So it wasn't so bad, but it was getting bad again. So I was glad that I was moving away. So then I started living by myself alone in the capital of Turkey. I started waking up early. I started working like 8 9 hours a day at least. A lot of the times much more actually because it was a very like high intensity work. But because things that I did mattered and I felt really good about the things that I was doing, like when it comes down to like writing code, training models, doing some other things that I'm not gonna get too much into right now. Essentially, what I was doing really mattered, and I felt really worth it at the end. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like I felt like I mattered. Like I was a
You are
positive
someone.
influence. I am
Yeah.
someone, but also I was a positive influence to the world. I wasn't this like
Yeah.
trash, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that I was on like a good schedule, like I slept early, I woke up early, I didn't game all the time. I still ate out like crazy because I wasn't gonna cook for myself, obviously. I knew I was fixed at that point, basically, because I hadn't had an attack for so long, and
Yeah.
even when I did, it was just like uh, getting less and less over time as well. I would say so. It had already passed, but what I'm trying to say is, and I say this too because I talk to a lot of friends and a lot of people online especially are going through mental issues, and that's why we need
Mm-hmm.
these kind of
Mm-hmm.
podcasts and
Mm-hmm.
things that help people. I like my advice to them often is it takes time to get better. It's not something that happens overnight. You really have to put in the work, even though at that point it's really hard to do anything. It's really hard to put in any work to anything. You still have to do it.
Yeah. No, sure.
Hmm.
I think, yeah, just to wrap up everything that we talked about, I think even though it was a long story, but I really, first of all, loved your storytelling.
Yeah.
That I feel like you, in details, explain how things were, and
Hmm.
which is good because then it makes me feel. I feel like as I said before we start recording the podcast, I told Alijan that think about it as we're driving on the same road, which is your
Yeah.
experience, and you are the driver, but I'm sitting there by the window, and occasionally I pour some tea for you, and I say, "Hey, how did it feel?" And that's how it really was.
Yeah.
And to recap, I think looking back at the story that you told me, you, well, certainly had a difficult, I would say, a
Mm.
teenagehood,
Yeah.
in the sense that maybe the relationship that you had with your mother as your primary caregiver while your dad was mostly working most of the time, yeah, it wasn't great. Maybe she didn't have so much boundary. When you said something to her, she didn't take it seriously. She made fun of you instead of caring for you and providing that love for you, that, hey, even though this is ridiculous what you're saying, but I am here for you because I love you. And so you never probably got that sense of belonging and being held, that, hey, it's okay, even though
Yeah.
things are shit, I'm here for you at this moment. And kind of the trust was gone, and it was this mental storm that even at home with my mother I don't feel completely safe. And a lot of people might feel this way, and
Mm.
that you are in these dark times that, I cannot do anything, and you cannot pull yourself out because you don't feel like you don't deserve it. This is what I am, and this is the circumstances that I was born with, and fuck it. And some people will try to take their life, which I think, I look at life as such a beautiful opportunity that is given to you. And if you are even in the circumstances, just try to ask for help. Get the outsider's perspective. In your case, the therapist that is the
Mm.
savior of this story for you, as your
Yeah.
word, the guardian angel. That in my mind, it looks like you were down there, and she like reached with this hand that, hey, Alijan, just
Hmm.
take it, and slowly try to pull you out of the swamp. And all these other hands started pulling you down, the epilepsy, now the cancer of the grandmother, and the dog
Hmm.
vanishing. But I felt like first she took you out a little bit of the swamp, and then you started doing more therapy, and then at some point you realize, whoa, I can also hold my own hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize this is the point, that this is for me depression. You When you know it's ending, when you trust yourself
Mm-hmm.
that I got this.
Yeah.
When you reach to a point that's like, oh, I know things are shit, and I have been through a lot of shit,
Mm-hmm.
but I know I can go through it, and I will be a better and a stronger person. This is when you deal with it. And you need the help. You need the help of the friends. You need the help
Mm-hmm.
of the therapist. You do need the help of different things that depending on what you want. For you, maybe work, that you felt like,
Yeah.
oh, now I'm doing something worthy and productive and positive for the society. Also, at the same time, maybe comfort, that of the anime being there, or
Mm-hmm.
your grandfather and that warm meal,
Mm-hmm.
even though simple and silly, but you just
Yeah.
coming back to that feeling, oh, there's a warm meal waiting for me. It's comforting. And I think, as you said, just things do take time and effort. So just be patient, get help if you needed to, talk to someone, and I promise everything will be better.
It's hard to promise that, but I can promise that it did for me, and it could for you too.
And for me, also, opening up helped a lot. Just the
Yeah.
fact that, hey, the stuff that I'm going through, also other people go through. And it is a difficult thing, and it's okay that you feel this way. The fact that now knowing that it's okay
Mm-hmm.
was so much weight off my shoulder. Now I was trying to actually swim up.
Yeah, and after like 10 years or something of me doing like starting therapy, coming here and telling my story is
Yeah,
also a way of kind of like closure for me,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like going through all those things, I was excited to be part of this
yeah,
podcast because I kind of wanted to like go through it as well, and I did figure out some of the things that I had forgotten along the way from your questions and your like
mm,
navigation as I was driving. I could
yeah,
also figure out some things, and I could also say things have gotten better even then. Like I said, like 2019, I started feeling better already. But then as like I moved to the Netherlands and my environment changed again to something better that suits me more, and like people around me became more people that I wanted to hang out with.
yeah,
I started making much more friends. I started becoming much more social. I became much more of an extrovert. I started like I made much more friends in the Netherlands in the past 3 years than I did in 30 years in Turkey. You know,
yeah, yeah,
so like things don't just get like, oh, like it's marginally better. It gets like very good once you shake that like
yeah,
depression demon off of yourself. You actually figure out who you really are, like what you are really capable of. And um I would say at this point the scary thing is to think like go back and then something good happens, you have this in your back of the head. It's like, what if I lose it all, right? Like, what if I go back into depression again or something like that? It's like, do I even deserve all this happiness and all of these things? Or like there, or like anxiety of, um, I'm happy now, but it means something bad will happen soon. Like sometimes something good happens,
yeah.
you can't even enjoy it because you think something bad will
Waiting.
follow up.
But you know why? I also sometimes share this view, but I think it's because of your childhood. It's
Probably. I mean, it's just
because you
anxiety.
always waiting for the next fight, for the next blame, or the next
Yeah.
bad thing happening to you. And
Yeah,
because that
maybe.
environment was never safe for you to
And
enjoy things.
even to this day, I bite my nails like crazy. You know,
Yeah,
I still have some sort of like anxiety going, but I'm truly and genuinely happy. Like
yeah,
this year,
yeah.
especially, has been like the best year of my life by far.
It's great.
I'm very happy with my, relationship. Getting a new dog,
Yes,
starting a family, and all of these things. And to me, like that would have felt so unreal that I couldn't even like relate to just 10 years
exactly.
ago.
Yeah,
And now, like things are really happening, and it really feels genuine and
yeah.
great. To be honest, like it's just
You should be proud of yourself
fantastic.
now.
Yeah, no, I am super proud of me. I actually recently had a talk with my father,
Yeah,
and I told him like, would you have imagined back then? Because he paid for all the therapy and the everything,
yeah,
you know. like all the medication, all the therapy, everything during that time. I say, would you have imagined just like 9 years ago or whatever when I started therapy that I would be here right now? And you know what he said? He said, I always knew. I always knew you were gonna make it. Like I had no doubt in my mind. It was just like a part of your life that you were struggling with. It didn't mean that you were less.
Yeah,
You were always like this to me, and that meant a lot to me. Like it
I
got
can
me
imagine.
really, yeah, it got me like really emotional. That I'm very very glad and happy that I have my father. It's not that like he's been perfect. You can't expect your parents to be perfect.
No, not
Uh,
nobody's parents perfect.
yeah, exactly. But like without my father, I would have struggled immensely. I think things I know in my childhood that I wish he would have done differently. But what's got like happened has happened in that regard as well. And all my life has been like such a major, major
Yeah.
support in every single
Mm.
way for me. Always has been understanding. Never once in my life, made me feel bad about myself. So I'm kind of happy that like I am here for him as well. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like I want him to have a son like this and not like
I
that.
know.
You know, and
And
the
I'm sure
fact that
he is proud of the son you are too.
yeah, and what meant a lot to me is that it's not that I am this now that he's proud of me. He's always been proud of me, even if it was if when I was at my worst, when I wasn't graduating school after like 7 years, or you know what I mean, like all of these things that were happening. He never made me feel less than, and even now, like looking back, and I was like, how different was I back then? And it feels almost alien, almost impossible for me to get here. To him, it wasn't. I look back and I think to myself, yeah, he never really treated me as if it was.
Less. Mm.
Yeah. So, like you said, like we need support along the way. Rather, maybe it's some activity, maybe it's some people, maybe it's work, but we need certain supports, and also
Yeah,
very
this
important.
is goes back to one of the episodes we talked about support system. That in the case of things happen, who are your support system that you talk to? So if anyone of the audience is interested to dig more deeper into this topic, refer to that
Hmm.
episode. I think it's around 4 or 5.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, great. Shall we wrap it up?
I think so. There's not too much more that I can say right now, but what I'll say is, I had a great time, and if you guys, would help
Yes.
me, I would like to be a guest again in the future.
Sure, sure.
Not
We would
necessarily
love
about
to.
my story, but just like maybe some other concept that I've also went through.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, we would love to, of course.
Hmm.
Cool. Taking another deep breath, taking everything in,
We were in sync on that one.
relaxing the shoulders. Yes. Thank you very much, Ali John.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was a great story, and thank you for being vulnerable so much. And I know saying all these things here and now might sound easy for you to say,
Hmm.
but I also have been there. These are
Hmm.
difficult things to share,
Hmm.
especially when you start sharing this kind of stuff, because maybe it's not normal. What if it's not
Hmm.
normal? And just talking about it takes so much courage. And now talking about it here for everyone to learn something about it takes more courage. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And I want to say I love you right here. And I
I love
am
you too,
proud of you.
Sooroosh.
I am proud of you.
I'm proud of you too, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that was it. This episode, probably this 2 episode of
Yeah.
Hearts Wide Open with Alijan. Yeah, hope you liked this 2 episode. Let us know what you thought. Follow us on social media on Instagram. If you have any comment, any feedback, let us know. It will make us happy. And as always, share the podcast with your friends. We're doing this on a Sunday in our free time. Yeah, so it means a lot for us if you share it with your friends so we can reach more audience. Thank you so much, Ali John. If you have any last words, it's your time.
Thank you for having me. I
Sure.
think I talked enough, to be honest. Um, I really do appreciate this kind of support system that you're kind of providing for people in general.
Mm.
And I think I hope that everything is successful.
Thank you.
And yeah, I think you deserve definitely. I thought you were a very good interviewer. You
Thank you
let
very
me
much.
go off, but you kept me on track, and I think that's a very good skill to have.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think it was very enjoyable. There's still like a side of me, a little bit that's just like a little scared because I was so vulnerable during this time. But thank you for making me feel comfortable as well. And
Sure,
again,
man.
I love you too, Sooroosh. You're,
Love
you're
you too.
great.
If you were
Yeah,
here, I would give you a hug.
I would give you a hug
We
too.
give virtual hugs.
Virtual hugs, yes.
From...
All right. Thanks,
Cool.
guys.
Thank you, everyone. See you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.